Hi, I want to discuss today about the context window, but in the context of ChatGPT chatbot. So we have two methods of dealing with large amount of data in ChatGPT. One is to attach a file in the chat window and then to ask our prompt, our question. And the second way is to ask our question and put in the same chat window text directly the pasted data. What's the difference? The big difference is that when we attach a file, there are very big chances that the ChatGPT model will try to use programming to analyze the file. When we attach in the prompt directly the data, the chances are that it will try to solve it in memory without the programming part. So it will try to use its own intelligence to solve the problem. Now, why the context window is important? Because the context window is like a limited memory that every LLM has, and it's hard-coded by design. It doesn't change. So in the same way, every model has also an output token limit, which is also by design embedded in the model. So when we put some data in the chat window, we have to think, is this data fitting in the memory of the model, so in the context? And if we want an output the same size of the input data, or even bigger if we want to augment or enrich the data, we have to think, does it fit in the output token limit? Because you have to think of the LLM, it's like a funnel. In one side is bigger, where is the context window, the input, and in one part is smaller, usually, when it's the output. And when we prompt the model, we have to think if it can look to all the data we provide to it, or it can see only a part of it, because this will affect the results that we're getting on the output side. So let's take this example. Here we have a small amount of data, which is much smaller than the context window. So in this case, we can just paste the data directly in the chat and do our prompting. And on the other side, we can even have enriched data, and we will have no data loss in the process. But we can have a situation when we have a larger amount of data, and in this case we will run the risk that it will not fit in the output token limit. So what will happen is, if we have a large amount of data, that still the model can see the whole data because it's smaller than the context window, but it's bigger than the output token, we can do summarization, for instance. Yeah. So for this would work perfectly, and we are not going to have broken data or anything. Still, if you attach the file and it's kind of a structured data or something like this, you may have surprises even with summarization, because it will try to do it programmatically and it will not look with its own eyes, let's say, the model to the whole data. It will write some code to read the data, which is different. So depends on your use case, it might or might not produce the desired result. So as long as you have your data smaller than the context window, I would advise you to put the data as like copy paste in the chat, unless you wish to have this data processed programmatically by the AI. There are many cases like this, especially when you deal with structured data and you actually want the LLM to write code to process your data. In this case, yeah, of course, you can attach the file. Otherwise, if you have text or unstructured data, I would advise you to paste it. It's safer to be sure it will actually read your whole data. And the last case is when we have data bigger than the context window. So this most probably, if you want to paste it, it won't work. So it will tell you, the chat directly will tell you this data is too big. And if you want to attach it as a file, it will try to look at it programmatically, or it will read only the first part of it. And the first part can vary, can be bigger or smaller, this part, depends how big is your file. And it will reply to you something, nevertheless, but it's very unreliable, the reply, and it can be very wrong and very inconsistent every time you rerun this prompt. So this is very risky. I would not advise you to do that. So just to have an idea how to choose your model when you want to process data, you have here a table, and you can see the different models have very different context window sizes and even more different ratio between the input and the output. Some models like GPT-4.1 have 32 times more input than output. output. So you can put a lot in, but you can get very little out. So if you want, let's say, to rewrite the Harry Potter novel, you can put it in, but you will not get out a novel. You will get out a chapter. And some other models, like O4 Mini, for instance, they have half of the output is half of the input, which is pretty reasonable, especially because the output itself is quite big. So it's 100,000 token opposed to 4.1, which is only 32, and the input is 1 million. So this varies a lot, and depending on your use case, you should choose your model.